Hey everybody, welcome to Pop Culture Philosophers. It's time for Comics Revisited. Today we're revisiting The Authority by Warren Ellis and Bryan Hitch. That's right, everybody. Thanks for checking out the video. I'm Rockin' Robbie Billups. This is
Jelani, Bullard.
And we are going to be talking about The Authority today by Warren Ellis and Bryan Hitch because it's Comics Revisited. And we've already, last season, we did a video about Stormwatch. Yep. Now we're talking about The Authority. If you've never read The Authority, I'll throw a link down below where you can hopefully get it. But this thing has been in and out of print. DC is kind of very inconsistent about how they keep the Wildstorm books in print. And some of the Wildstorm books by Warren Ellis are the best that have ever existed. That's why me and Jelani are talking about them. So I have them in these original 2 trade paperbacks. This also has the beginning of the Mark Millar run, but we're not getting into that. So flashback with me, if you will, Jelani. 1999. It is my graduation year, right? I am obsessed with The Matrix.
Oh, yeah.
I am doing nothing but listening to Limp Bizkit. As sad as that is to admit. Well, and I am fascinated by this new comic book called The Authority. I saw it on the shelf. I walked in. I'm in, it's like my graduation year. Whatever year it came out in 99. I think it was when I was still in high school. Yeah, so I think it was like April or May. I don't remember exactly. Someone will surely let us know in the comments down below. But I remember going there, not knowing anything about Warren Ellis, not knowing anything about who these characters were. I never read Stormwatch. I picked this first issue, and I read it, and it just blew me away. It was violent. It was excessively violent. Yes. It was on a scope that I don't see much in superhero comic books. At least I hadn't to that point, right? Because there's always been violence and excessiveness in comic books, but it's always seemed a little campy, a little restricted, a little constrained, right? In The Authority, it was let loose. And then having the double punch of that and The Authority and the triple punch of Limp Bizkit really changed the way that I thought about the world, made me a little bit angry, made me a little bit cynical, but I loved it so much. This was a follow-up to Warren Ellis' work on Stormwatch. He found out that Wildstorm was only publishing Stormwatch because they enjoyed reading it. Because he was doing a superhero book that had never been done before. It was grounded in reality. It was about these assholes that were in superhero power, and they were working around the corrupt governments of the world. And of course, the leader of Stormwatch, Bendix, was crazy. And all this stuff ultimately led into some characters that he created into The Authority. He was like, you know what? Let's do something with this. And so he called up Bryan Hitch. They got it going. What were your impressions of The Authority back in the day? Because I know you read it back in the day.
Yes, I did.
Because we were there together.
Yes, we were.
The Authority DAP.
Man, this book, I had no clue what it was. It was kind of like The Matrix, as you explained The Matrix. When I went to watch The Matrix, I went in and didn't think about it. I was like, it's a movie. I guess I'll watch it. And it blew me away. And this is what Authority did. It's a widescreen comic book.
It was the Matrix of the comic.
It kind of gives you the impression it's very unassuming, but it's awesome. These people, these characters are pretty much they're the worst human beings in some points. I mean, one is like a hardcore drug addict. One is just they're just selfish, self-absorbed. Yeah. Do what we say or else, change or die kind of situated characters that I've really never really expected in a comic book, because in comic books, if you have a super team, you got a super team that works together and they like each other and they do this. Now they work well together, and they don't really, and Warren Ellis doesn't really characterize the characters as much, because it's mostly about the epic story that is about to be. It's huge. And it's like, what if these people actually needed to save the world? And they knew that they didn't have these constraints like they did in Stormwatch, where they needed UN permission and they needed code perfects to get out and save the world, when they just saved the world.
Because someone's got to save it.
Somebody got to save it.
And it's such a thing on Jenny Sparks, that character.
Yes. My favorite character.
Spoilers, if you've never read Warren Ellis' Authority, you need to, but we're going to spoil it right here.
Yeah.
This is the final opus of Jenny Sparks.
It is.
A character that was introduced in Warren Ellis' Stormwatch, and there's some nice characterization there. But this is basically his final story. So Warren Ellis decided, I'm going to do 12 issues. I'm going to break those up into 3 4-issue arcs. And they're each going to keep escalating in threat. They're going to deal with the fears of humanity. The fear of the terrorist state.
Right.
The fear of an invasion from the unknown. And the fear of the God. You know what I'm saying?
God is coming
Basically.
back, and it's not a good thing.
These stories escalate in scope, and they get huge. And the one thing that I feel that's actually tragic about Jenny Sparks' story is that Jenny wants to change the world. And this is something that is set up in Stormwatch, right?
Yeah.
And she takes the idea that Bendix has, and she kind of does the same thing, but differently. I think that what Jenny's doing is more noble than what Bendix is doing. Bendix is doing it because he wants control.
Right, and he wants to be known.
Jenny's wanting it because she knows that she's going to die at the strike of midnight, the year 2000. Right?
She's the spirit of the 20th century.
Do you remember how that felt when you read that? Like how we weren't prepared for that.
I wasn't ready for it.
I thought this book was going to go for
I thought she was coming back.
Yeah.
I honestly kept reading, expecting Jenny Sparks to come back.
Well, Jenny Quantum came back, but that's a story for another day, of course.
But this... Jenny Sparks is my favorite Warren Ellis character.
Yeah.
She's the most fleshed out for me because she's no nonsense. She doesn't care what happens in this situation as long as the job gets done.
Yeah.
And she knows how to make a team gel. When they lost Jenny Sparks, they were kind of shifted. That's different storylines, but I don't think the team is never more as solid as when you have Jenny Sparks.
Oh, absolutely.
At the helm.
And there's this whole history behind the character, and you get little bits here and there in Stormwatch and, of course, in the Authority. And then later on, Mark Millar did the Secret History of Jenny Sparks or whatever. Right. But with the Warren Ellis stuff, I love that character. Once again, a superhero in a white jacket that smokes, that's cynical, that's super powerful, and just screw it all, right?
Yeah.
But I love it. Yeah. I love that character. But what's the tragedy of the Authority to me is that she wants so hardcore to change the world. It's what the original Authority almost
was about.
It was the High and the original engineer, the original doctor. All they were trying to do was actually change the world for the better. Jenny never had that chance.
Right.
All she had to do was respond to these threats one after another. And then you realize in the Mark Millar run that as they're trying to change the world, they have to go up against a whole lot more. Right? So it's kind of sad that Jenny Sparks never actually saw the realization of that. But it's very... Of course, she would. You know, she's not going to fix the world at the end of the millennium in like 2 years.
Right.
And the other thing was the added aspect of this came out in '99 with The Matrix and Limp Bizkit. I don't know why I'm talking about Limp Bizkit so much. You know, I stopped wearing my Yankees cap backwards for a long time because of Limp Bizkit. Anyway, but I was such a huge fan. Anyway,
it's gonna be all right.
Yeah, it was okay. There are other characters in this book though, and Jenny Sparks' story is super hugely important, but there's the new engineer, the new doctor, Jack Hawksmoor coming back, Swift coming back, Apollo and Midnighter getting so much action. What do you think about those characters? Who are your favorite? Who stands out? What moments?
The standout characters for me, of course, are Apollo and Midnighter.
Oh, absolutely.
That's basically Superman and Batman if they were in love and did murder.
No holds barred.
I mean, they don't care. Like Midnighter throws that punch, but he studies your punch 3 or 4 times before you make your move.
Million times.
Yeah,
something like that.
And then Apollo can harness the rays of the sun and doesn't breathe.
Apollo is the ultimate MacGuffin. He's like,
well, you need him.
Yeah,
you need something that big for the threats they have. They need something.
So much of this is just Jenny trying to figure things out, right?
Yeah.
And meanwhile, Apollo, go handle this.
Yeah,
right?
go handle that.
It's absolutely
go take
crazy.
Care of that. But Jack is another one.
Jack's a great character.
Jack I love because he lives inside cities. And he breathes pollution.
I think that's the most original concept for a superpower ever.
Yeah.
It's so amazing.
Where do you come up with that stuff?
And
then he gets alien parts. He has alien feet, so he always walks barefoot.
Yeah. Now this is obviously a character that comes over from Stormwatch. And in Stormwatch, he's kind of a character that doesn't really He's not
He's
that.
he's all right.
He's very cynical.
But
He's
they
kind
make
of
him
not
look like a detective.
He's not sure of his place, right? But in the Authority, he embraces it.
Right. And he becomes the leader.
After Jenny leaves, he becomes the leader, absolutely. The engineer's great.
Yeah.
The doctor's great.
The
doctor. And what's amazing about these characters is that even though we said that Warren Ellis didn't focus too much on the characters, he really focused on the epic cinematic nature of the threats and how they dealt with them. And they dealt with them in the same way that the threats came. Right, with no remorse,
right,
and just doing what needed to be done. But there is a subtlety of characterization there. There are little bits that are revealed about Angie, that are revealed about the Doctor, that are revealed about Jack, that are revealed about Midnighter and the Apollo, Midnighter at the Apollo. Anyway, Swift. There are little things, not so much maybe with Swift, but there are little things about all those characters that really help. Like he, with very little word, totally got us to understand who Angie was as the engineer.
Yes.
And who she was before the engineer.
Right. In so many little words. Just not too much. But you get that all the files from the original engineer are downloaded into her computer.
And I love the Doctor. That he has downloaded into his brain all the other memories and experiences of the Doctors before.
Right.
One of them is Jesus. One of them is Albert Einstein, Martin Luther King. They're all over the place in there. Tons of nice little Easter eggs there. Rasputin from Hellboy is one of them. Really cool stuff. I really like it. Really like those characters. But I would say one of the most important characters in all of the Authority is the Carrier. Yep. And that's a character.
It is a character.
Explain the character.
Absolutely.
What you think about
I wanted a Carrier. I've wanted a Carrier since 1999.
Like a figure?
I want a carrier.
Oh, you just want one, yeah.
I want a carrier.
Who doesn't?
It's a living ship that basically was probably in a tribe of other ships and got lost. And it's stuck on Earth. And the coolest part about this ship is it's city-sized. So, of course, Jack can live on it.
Man, it's bigger than some cities.
Bigger than most
cities. It's like, what, 30 by 50 miles or something like that?
It's huge.
And it looks like a dog's snout.
Yeah.
And it makes it feel alive, and it's
a real
literally the reason why they beat all three of these threats. Because Midnighter drives it through
Kaz and Gamora's building.
They use it to shift over to
all
Albion.
The people.
And then they use it to go into God. So that Jenny can spark his. So what about those threats? Because like we said, it's an island of terror. Of genetically engineered terror by Gamora. And this is a villain from the Stormwatch run where they killed Bendix in retaliation for an act of terror that Gamora did, killed 200 of his citizens.
Yeah.
And so this sets up what he's doing here. And when it starts, the first thing that happens in the Authority is Moscow gets destroyed.
Yep.
Right? And then he's trying to make his mark, so they come after London, then they're going to LA. And the Authority can only be there to try to stop it or prevent it.
Whatever it is.
And then Midnighter drives that thing right through. Then in the next story, you got another world, an alternate reality that Jenny has a past with. It's a world where Sicily has conquered Britain. And they're now New Albion.
Right.
But they have intermingled with the blue aliens.
Yeah.
And
the aliens take over the Earth. But
they're losing their population, so they want to conquer our Earth now.
Right.
And then from that, and they use the carrier for that to go over there. And then there's God, basically.
God.
It's the entity that moved Earth to where it's supposed to be, but something happened that moved Earth away, so it comes back. It's ready to take it back, and there's the 6 billion. Yeah. And he's like, let's cleanse it, and the moon erupts, and there's all these crazy things that come down, and it's how we're going to be talking about Grant Morrison's JLA run in this season of Comics Revisited, and the threats escalate, but Ellis left himself little room by going the way he did. National terror, international terror, other dimensional invasion, God. It's so big. What do you think about the escalation, man?
It's supposed to be that big. It is. Yeah, it's epic in scale for a reason. It shows the many threats. And Kaz and Gamora, it kind of ends him as a villain. Yeah. Stormwatch. He's done. He's done. But
I think Ellis wanted us to know how definitive the Authority dealt with things. Right. Something unlike what superheroes to that point did. Of it.
They have to wait for Code Perfect or ways to get into trade with other people to get to where they needed to go, and they couldn't do certain things. The Authority does not hold back.
Yeah.
And they take out everything, and it's just like superhumans, genetically created superhumans, are just trying to take over the Earth. And Kazan Gamora's just like, I just wanted to make my mark. I want to scar the Earth.
I just want to have some fun.
I want to have some fun.
Oh, Midnighter's like, I hit things.
I hit.
The whole damn book, he's like, these things are getting bigger than me.
I love it. And then you go to the Sliding Albion, or that story where it's just these crazy blue aliens you have to fight in order to save our Earth from.
And I love the alternate history. It's just
it's a great alternate history. Yeah, how they take over, or how blue aliens came like in the Renaissance and mingled with our.
How about how the Doctor destroys Italy?
Yeah.
So that they don't rise again.
They shift it,
He holds Italy in place as the Earth rotates. Oh my goodness.
And everyone gets
They destroyed an entire country.
Yep.
Oh, that's going to be a question I talk about. What about the God art?
And the God.
I was like, how are you going to top this? How
It's
are you
a
going to get
gigantic, just snot ball. That's all it is. It's the grossest thing I've ever seen.
Yeah.
But the way they portray how people die.
Yeah, and then the actual guy, when it's like this pyramid type shape.
It's a pyramid inside.
They have to take the carrier
and they have to go inside of it to just fry it.
Yeah.
Huntsville, Texas. So
yeah, Jenny fries its brain, and dies in the process.
Mm-hmm.
And then at the stroke of midnight, she dies, and Jenny Quantum is born. Mm-hmm. That leads us and sets us up for the next one. This book is uber violent, it's very cinematic, but what about... Ellis already has some cool ideas. He's got some great characters, but this book would not have worked without the collaboration with Bryan Hitch. Mm-hmm. Bryan Hitch did such an amazing job making it feel epic, cinematic, widescreen. When we say that, like, comic books were restricted to the grid back in the day, and sometimes they broke that grid, and they broke it often. And we had splash pages and stuff like that. Well, they're seeing it on the screen.
Oh, yeah.
Hitch was able to kind of take that and make it cinematic and stretch it out into widescreen and kind of take things from movies like Independence Day, and what and they are like Hitch was actually able to visually forecast where cinema was about to go,
and it did.
What do you think about Bryan Hitch's art and how important
Bryan
it is?
Hitch's,
Plus, you got the inkers and the colors. Laura Dupuy and Paul. Was it Paul?
What is it?
I've got it right here. Paul Neary on the inking. Amazing work. Some of Bryan. I think it's Bryan Hitch's second best work.
Really?
I think Ultimates is better. As far as Bryan Hitch's work.
Okay.
But the Ultimates would have happened without Authority. What about Bryan Hitch?
Bryan Hitch is an amazing artist. I know why. I see now why it takes so long to draw what he puts out. It's detailed. It is cinematic. It makes you feel like you're immersed in this book. Like, I really love... in fact, I'm drawn more to the art than I am the story of most things. But with Authority, it's both. And because it's so seamless, you can tell that he understood what Warren Ellis was writing and what he gave as a direction to make that page happen.
Oh,
he tells story without words, and it's amazing.
It's beautiful.
It is gorgeous.
There's so many silent pages, and of course Warren Ellis can set up and write in a script action like nobody else, and the perspective that Bryan Hitch puts on these things, he makes it feel real. He makes it feel like when I first read that first issue and Moscow's being destroyed and Jack Hawksmoor is punching through people's faces and Midnighters are slaughtering people and Apollo and it was just like I had never seen anything like that. There were moments
how violent it is.
There were moments in The Watchmen. Mm-hmm. There were moments in Dark Knight Returns. There were moments in other books.
But nothing
was like The Authority.
Like that.
Nothing was on the scale.
Hyper violent.
And of course it got
perfect.
It got a lot of flack, a lot of criticism for being so hyper violent. Right. What do you think about that? Because also at the time, and we're in an age still where mass shootings are still happening.
Right.
But this was still kind of a relatively new idea in American culture at the time. This was the year of Columbine.
Exactly.
You know, and things were shifting, and The Authority got a lot of flack, especially later on in the Miller run, for being so excessively violent. Do you think it's excessively violent? Do you think it's the right
is. Yeah. It's a right amount, though. It tells what it needs to tell. I mean, it's how people would get... If you got punched by Jack Hawksmoor, that's what's going to happen to you.
No, but does it glamorize it? I don't think
I don't think it glamorizes it.
I don't think it does either, because it's
telling a story, and they're dealing with a threat that will kill them if they don't kill them.
There are moments in the story where, like, the engineer is dealing with the morality of it. Jack has kind of given up on thinking about the morality of it. Ginny can't afford herself that luxury.
Right.
Apollo and Midnighter were trained to be killers. The Doctor is in and out of his head. But Swift has one of the best moments because she tries to solve the issue with, was it God?
Oh, God.
Was it God? Yeah. So or was it Albion? It was God. Or was it Albion? It was one of them.
Remember.
We just read this.
We just
revisited it. But she offers, like, no, we're not going to kill. We're going to try to do this.
This diplomatically.
But it doesn't work.
That's right. It was Albion.
But it doesn't work. Yeah. And when you're dealing with a force like that, like, Gamora is not there to do anything. He doesn't. When the UN asks him, "What do you want?"
Yeah,
he laughs. He's like, "I don't want nothing.
I don't
want nothing. I'm just gonna destroy
the world.
Yeah, there we go. I don't want anything.
I'm making my scar.
Yeah,
I want my scar.
Albion has a very specific reason why they want to conquer Earth. Like, how are you going to beat that? Like, there's no reason. Like, they're not going to negotiate with you.
Not
then
at all.
God, this thing that thinks of us as just this parasitic.
Ants. Yeah, they're ants. Nothing.
You're not going to deal with it.
Yeah.
You have to deal with that through that violence, which brings us to the idea of the themes of the book, which, number one, we talked about this in the Stormwatch video, change or die.
It is.
And Bendix, that was his philosophy, and even though he comes at it from a different perspective than Ginny does, they have that same idea. Ginny's like, we're going to show you by how badass it takes the authority
to save the world.
To make people act right.
Right.
That how many times did Ginny say, "Y'all act right, y'all be good to one another, behave, because this is what we are capable of. So be scared because there's a new authority." And the idea of them calling themselves the authority, and how would humanity feel like about that, and the idea like y'all change or you're gonna die, and that is a very real thing in everybody's life, Jelani. Like, you have to change or die. When things happen. Or when things aren't going the right way, you got to change, or you're going to be stagnant. And not moving is done.
It's death.
Life is moving, right?
Absolutely.
What do you think about that whole idea of change or die and the impression of the authority and how that would feel to be, they don't really deal. It seems like humanity likes the authority.
They do. But they're scared of them.
But they're scared of them, and that they're scared, just like,
because they don't have anyone that keeps them in check.
Yeah,
there's no one there to keep them in check, and you have to have checks and balances somewhere.
Yeah.
But with this group, they have superpowers. They're not out to ruin people's lives.
Yeah.
I mean, there's clearly not that. So they're here to save the world. They're here. And you better recognize it, and you better do the same.
And you better behave.
Or better behave.
Yeah.
And it's such a good message, man.
The only reason why I think humanity in the book responds to them the way they do, and because they don't provide new things like the High and his crew did. And they lament the idea that they can't because they're dealing with it. And that's the tragedy of this, right?
They have to deal with all these threats, and they can't change the world.
Exactly. Yep. But the world is changing just by their existence. Right. Just by the way that they're doing things. Because I also love that we got Jackson and Christine still in the UN. They have very little to do in this book.
Nothing. They have nothing to do.
All Jackson does is bitch about that. Just like, whoa, we should be able to do something here. Then they led into the monarchy, but that was better left unsaid.
We're not talking.
The way that humanity responds to them is because they saved them. I love that moment at the end when Ginny knows that this is the last time she's talking to everybody on Earth. And she's like, y'all be good while we're gone. We're going to go save you. And it's such a tragic moment. It's such a beautiful moment. But what I want to ask you is this. The only reason why humanity likes the authority, why we like the authorities, because they're the bad guys.
They are the bad guys.
Warren Ellis admits they're the bad guys. They're terrible people. They're doing terrible things. But they're going up against someone bigger. He even said Hitler would seem like an angel if he was beating up Satan.
Right.
Do you know what I'm saying? And maybe that's a stretch.
But they're not Hitler.
Yeah.
They're nowhere near that.
No, nowhere near. They're like like the idea of should we go kill Hitler would you if you could go back in time and kill Hitler, would you? Ginny Sparks is like, yes.
Yes.
Absolutely.
Let's do it.
Absolutely. What do you think? Are they the bad guys? Why are they not? Why are they?
I think they're realistic people. I think they're honestly people. And they're people with superpowers that use them the way they need to use them.
Yeah.
Now, they do have tendencies because they're killers. They were already killers. They've been trained in Stormwatch.
Yeah.
And they knew what they need to do. They know what they need to do in any situation.
Absolutely.
And they're already trained killers. So, with people with kind of no remorse having these powers and actually doing something about it with this awesome ship.
But it's also because they've seen
so much.
They've seen the other side. They know that they're not going to give up. Yeah. There's no way to negotiate with a terrorist island.
I think they're good people. I honestly think they're good people. It's just their personalities are trash in some ways, but they're not. They don't characterize them as well in the Ellis run. But at the same time, you can still tell that these people are just like.
You get those threats of normal people out of their head. Angie is just a normal woman who likes to go out and club every once in a while and just kind of work, is a workhorse.
She's a working person, yeah.
And the doctor's a junkie. And he doesn't delve into that. He doesn't elaborate on it. He just slightly tells it. And that one moment, for instance, where Jenny's like, "Need I remind you that I met him for the first time in Amsterdam?" Yep. And just he's over his head. I really think that Mark Miller took the celebrity aspect and threw it in, and that kind of tinged and tainted a little bit of what Warren Ellis was doing. Because as violent it is, and it's trying to make heroes real, like you said.
Right.
If real people were heroes, and this is what, this is something that's been explored.
Yeah.
Alan Moore has done this. Frank Miller has done this. Yep. So, has Frank Miller done it? But, there are other people have done this. Like, The Watchmen did this for sure, right? Yeah. Squadron Supreme.
Yeah, especially Squadron Supreme.
So, when I first read Squadron Supreme, which was after The Authority, I actually was surprised at, how much The Authority, books like Rising Stars, which were coming out contemporarily, how much they pull from Squadron Supreme, which is going to be on the PCP
we are definitely doing
Comics Revisited Audience Choice Poll this year. So be there on the PCP Army over on Facebook. Hopefully by this video, it will be up and ready. Squadron Supreme, vote for it. Because that's kind of the original Authority.
Yeah, it is.
In a way.
It really is.
And they completely F everything up.
God, true.
They really do.
Man.
But in the midst of all this realism, which leads to violence, which leads to corruption, showing the corruption not just of the people. Absolute power corrupts absolutely. How many times did we hear that in history class? Right? And it's a real thing that we see in our world, so of course it would happen in the superhero world. And of course it happens with the governments around the superheroes.
It's exactly
world,
it. They're just as dirty.
Stormwatch deals a little bit more with the government aspect.
Yeah.
But this is what happens when those people say, we're done with that. Stormwatch is dead. We're now the Authority.
Yep.
Right? And we're going to do it what Bendix tried to do, but better. And right? It gets crazy. It gets crazy. But juxtaposing this is this enormous sense of wonder, Jelani. How many times in this book do you see a moment where Jenny Sparks or the engineer, they're watching, say, flying through idea space,
right,
or the psychic realms where psychic minds are born, where they're going through the realm of the gods.
Realm of gods, yeah.
Oh my goodness, and they're going by 25 dreams per second or whatever it is. Some of my favorite moments of The Authority are the moments when Warren Ellis is describing the journey of the carrier.
Yeah.
And how many times you see someone like Jenny or Angie or anybody else go, this is so beautiful and it's all worth it. I gave up my life, but this is worth it. There's a sense of wonder. There's a sense that Warren Ellis has throughout all of his work, as cynical as it can be, as apocalyptic as it can be, apocalyptically prophetic as it can be. There is a sense of wonder in Warren Ellis' work. There's a sense of there are amazing things out there to learn. What do you think about that?
Oh yeah, it's like an LSD trip. That's what it is. It's like watching just out of your window. This is a normal occurrence for me.
Yeah.
To see these things and to take part in what you're doing. And they're doing it to save the world in some form or fashion.
Yeah.
I love that ship, man. I will not stop talking about the carrier.
Wouldn't it be nice to have like a model of
the ship, of the carrier.
That'd be beautiful.
Because it's such an amazing thing. And, I keep forgetting to mention, it's the coolest thing ever. All you have to say is door.
Yes.
And then a door appears because and you go anywhere you want.
It's anchored to Earth. It's occupying all space on Earth at the same time, so they can just open a door and jump into anywhere they want
Anywhere they want to go. And it's such an amazing...
So cool. The technology. We talked a lot about that in the Stormwatch. Like, Warren Ellis likes to think about where technology is going to go and the cutting edge sci-fi. And I really like it. It's cutting-edge sci-fi that seems grounded, that's not, but eventually kind of almost comes true, in a way, right?
I wish we did have doors.
Why is this book so important that we're talking about it? Well, it redefined comic books for years. It completely redefined comics.
Realistic heroes.
Realistic heroes. We have that widescreen cinema. 10 years went by, and all of Bendis' Avengers run, Mark Miller's Ultimates run with Bryan Hitch, of course, the whole Ultimate Universe. Even DC started getting into it a little bit. This big, epic scope to things, right? And that eventually, in turn, influenced the movies of the time, right? I really feel like Warren Ellis and Bryan Hitch were visually trying to capture what movies couldn't quite do yet.
Right.
And now movies do that all the time. And if it wasn't for the Ultimates, there wouldn't be an MCU the way we see it. And if it wasn't for the Authority, there wouldn't be an Ultimate. So technically, I would dare to say that if there was no The Authority by Ellis and Hitch, there would be no MCU as we know it today.
Wow, that's
I would say that.
There
would be no Ultimates.
I could agree. There wouldn't be an Ultimates without The Authority.
Leading to the idea that this absolutely cemented the career of Bryan Hitch and Warren Ellis.
Yes.
Warren Ellis and Bryan Hitch were already respected in the field at the time, but this really changed it.
Yeah.
This really changed it. Warren Ellis had done Transmet, but The Authority and Planetary in conjunction locked it down.
Yep.
Bryan Hitch, able to do whatever he wants to, and still pumping out great work right now.
Absolutely.
He just wrapped up a Hawkman run that came out monthly for 12 issues.
What?
It was amazing.
He was on it.
Yes. And it's so good. Redefined Hawkman. Totally. It took all those different timelines and ideas,
and put them all together,
like and made it make sense, and made it big and epic.
Wow.
Right? Absolutely. And now, the next project Bryan Hitch is working on is a 12-issue series with Warren Ellis, and it's The Batman's Grave. They're doing 12 issues of Batman.
That'd be cool.
Coming out this October.
Nice.
Very excited. It's about to come out. So excited about that. What do you think the most important thing about this book is?
The fact that you can see how change happens. I don't know how to explain that in a bigger way, but it is the way that it's presented. I love how it's presented. I love how these people take on like threats that are like you could never imagine.
Yeah.
And actually fight them. And you see it in other books, but not on this scale. And I think change is the biggest thing about this. You do change or die because of it.
Yeah.
And it's still the reason why it's my favorite book of all time. I put it up really high because I didn't expect it. There are a lot of things that you don't.
You have the absolute authority, don't you?
I have the absolute authority.
I'm so envious.
Yeah, man. It's a good read too. That's where I read it. I had to read it in that size.
Yeah.
And it's truly amazing that these two guys got together and made a book like this to make me enjoy characters, enjoy the space of it, to make me follow it for, a good bit. Yeah. I didn't go all the way with some of the Authority things now, but Wildstorm is amazing as well.
The Wildstorm is back, and the Authority are back. Yeah. It couldn't even be better. So that's another thing that's important because now Warren Ellis is doing it all again.
Yes.
And it's so much fun. So much fun.
Yeah.
I enjoyed so much revisiting The Authority.
Yeah.
I'm looking forward to maybe next season doing Mark Miller's run. Because now I'm kind of set up for it.
Yeah.
But Warren Ellis, what he did with Bryan Hitch, it's absolutely amazing.
It is.
Jelani said it was his favorite comic book of all time, so of course he recommends it. We recommend it. If you haven't read it and you've made it through this video, we spoiled everything, but you still need to read it.
Yeah.
It would still be very impactful. I think it still feels impactful today.
Yeah, it does.
Maybe some things feel a little dated, but not too much. Not
other
too
than
much.
Jenny being the spirit
it's
of the
not
20th
as dated
century.
as The Matrix is.
It's
The Matrix got payphones in it.
Yeah, it does.
You know what I'm saying? But anyway, I absolutely love The Authority. Thank you guys so much for checking out the video. Please let us know your recollections and your revisits of The Authority down in the comments down below. And be sure to join us next week for Comics Revisited. Absolutely not. Sorry. We're taking a break next week, because this has been 5 episodes. We're taking a break next week, but be back in 2 weeks. Me and Brooks are going to be talking about What If number 3. What if the Avengers had never been? That would have changed some things.
A lot.
That would have changed a lot of things. And we'll be talking about that in 2 weeks. But thank you guys so much for checking out the video. I've been Rockin' Robbie Billups. This has been
Jelani Bullard.
We are PCP. Thanks for joining the PCP Army. You can do so officially over at our Facebook group. That's right, PCP Army. the official Pop Culture Philosophers Facebook group. You can support us financially at PCP or at patreon.com/PCP, or just join us over at popculturephilosophers.com for podcasts and a whole lot more, or just like, share, and subscribe. Thank you guys so much for rocking with us. Kramer, behave. Hey everybody, welcome to Pop Culture Philosophers. Today, it's time for Comics Revisited. Today, we're revisiting Warren Ellis's...
You are not ready.